Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Beautiful day to live in Winona County.
Excuse me.
All right.
Here's mine.
All right. We will start the May 11th meeting here with public comment. Anyone wishing to address the Winona County Board, please.
I do, yes.
Okay, please come to the podium and state your name and address.
Linda Sunbeam, 354 Pleasant Hill Drive, Winona, Minnesota.
Go ahead.
I do please want to object strongly to a new dog breeding kennel and request that this permit be denied due to past compliance problems and the difficult of the regulating and many agencies that do need to regulate that. They have one farm, 2 adults, children's, so they're going to add another facility. I think many points need clarification by history. The owner has a breeding kennel that's primary goal is to be making money and not the welfare of these little animals. The report's statement of the proposed use appears to exceed the owner's ability to meet the physical and emotional needs of the small Yorkie dogs. These dogs and their puppies are smaller than a newborn baby. And they need to have a decent quality of life. These dogs are products as they're being permitted to be used at. I don't understand how it even passed the planning committee when meaningful questions were answered regarding compliance with vague and minimal words like mostly. Well, what's mostly? Were they compliant 51% of the time and the rest of the time they weren't compliant? Teachable moments, what does that mean? Not critical, so the dogs aren't dying at that moment.
Okay. We need you to wrap up. We allow 2 minutes.
Okay,
Please.
it's not in a needed facility, and it is a burden to the taxpayers to get multiple policing agencies out there to police these areas.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to address the Winona County Board? Yes, sir. Please step forward.
Hello.
Good morning.
Morning. My name is Colin Anderson. I live at 24375 Pickwick Loop Road in Minnesota. And I'm here just in denial of the Planning Commission's decision to allow the interim use permit out in Pickwick for the small business for many reasons. I guess the first thing is I found out about this April 16th, the day after it was granted, and it included an easement for a retaining wall on my property. So I looked at the agenda minutes the next day and I noticed for the very first time, literally the plan which there's going to be a shipping container for a small business right next to my home. So I had some concerns, some red flags went up right away: privacy, safety, extra traffic, erosion, encroachment, trespassing, parking, depreciation, just the aesthetics of the landscape. I've been out there for 16 years, a little longer than the petitioners, and I was never notified of this once. And you think maybe the next door neighbor should know, especially if there's easement involved. And once they found out my concerns, the plan changed and they didn't need easement anymore, but none of the concerns were addressed whatsoever or resolved. And I've reached out several times. I've heard nothing back to this day. Like I said, it's a dangerous road, Pickwick Loop Road, and I invite any of you to come on out anytime. Our driveways are both uphill, and they come down to just a complete blind country road, and it's really, really dangerous. I've been in an accident myself on that road, and I've had hundreds So I'm just concerned about my daughter and my own
Pardon me,
safety.
I'm sorry. Commissioner Olson is pointing at his ear. I think that he cannot hear you.
You can't hear me? I'm sorry.
Right there, yeah.
Okay,
So,
you can
yes.
take your mask off.
Or,
if
but
you'd
just speak
like,
up, yeah.
Or
Okay.
speak right into the mic.
Yeah,
Okay, I
sorry,
do-
and I apologize for
I'm
interrupting.
sorry, no,
Where
sorry.
is Commissioner
Thank you.
Olson? I don't
Um,
see him.
In the-
I just have some concerns that have not been addressed yet or resolved. I have reached out with these concerns to the petitioners. I haven't heard anything back. Like I said, the safety is number one. It's a very dangerous road. And like I said, I've been in an accident myself on the road.
And we need you to wrap up,
Okay,
please.
thank you. Anyway, I did include a letter that I had to quickly draft up because I just found out about this. If you would please take into consideration some of my concerns that, again, have not been resolved yet before making a final decision. Just look at the letter, and I really appreciate your time in this matter. And like I said, none of the issues have been resolved, and there's some pretty big ones. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I did also send you an email.
Yes, I did receive that this morning, and I apologize. I didn't have time to.
That's okay. I apologize for the delay. All this is still kind of new to me.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to address the county board? Is there anybody online that would like?
I would.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning. This is Cindy Sue Glaive, the one that Colin Anderson neighbors to. I did email a response to his concerns. I do believe Ann was going to forward that email on to everybody. So every concern he had, it has been answered in my attachment with the photos.
Okay. And I apologize, that was sent to the planning department?
I emailed Ann and she said she would forward the email to every member.
You're right, there was another, there
we
was
got that.
several emails, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, that's the one you're referring to, the latest.
Correct.
All right, thank you for clarification. All right, is there anyone else wishing to address the Winona County Board? Is there anyone else wishing to address the Winona County Board? And for the last time, is there anyone else wishing to address the county board? Sir, we usually allow just one. Okay, all right, thank you. All right, thank you for public comments. Moving on in our agenda, item 3, approval of the county board meeting minutes from April 27th, 2021.
I'll move approval.
If I have a second. Do I have a second to approve the meeting minutes?
So moved. Or second?
Okay, we have a motion made by Commissioner Meyer, seconded by Commissioner Olson to approve the meeting minutes. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, they are approved. Item number 4, acknowledge receipt of approved committee meeting minutes from 4.1, the Whitewater Joint Powers Board, February 18th, 4.2, the Planning Commission, March 18th, and 4.3, the Road and Bridge, December 15th, 2020.
I'll move to acknowledge 4.1, 4.2, and 4.3.
Meyer will second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Jacobs, second by Commissioner Meyer to acknowledge 4.1, 4.2, and 4.3. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All right, they are also approved. All right, item number 5, consent comments and approval of the agenda. Mr. Fritz?
Yeah, I have one item to add regarding the jail at the end of the discussion.
Okay, so we have a jail item at the end.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Olson?
I'd like to pull 6.4 for a separate vote, please.
Okay, 6.4 for a separate vote, so we will make that 7.0. All right. Commissioner Kavesi?
I have an update at the end of the meeting on a committee meeting.
Okay. Commissioner Meyer?
Yeah, so I guess, given the testimony that we heard, I'd like the opportunity to have staff respond and hear a little bit more about the complaint about the retaining wall. So I guess I'd pull 6.3 and make that maybe 7.01.
Okay.
that okay?
7.01, yes.
I also have a board action at the end that I'd like to talk about, and I have an announcement.
Board action. And an announcement?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Jacob.
To pull 6.2, separate vote.
Okay, 6.2 for a separate vote, and so we'll make that 7.02. 6.2, all right. And anything else?
Yeah,
That's
I'll have an announcement too.
Okay, announcement, all right. All right, and I have nothing at this time. So with that amended agenda, I would entertain a motion to approve the amended agenda.
Meyer would be, I'll move.
Kavesi, second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Meyer, second by Commissioner Kavesi to approve the amended agenda. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay? Okay, the amended agenda is approved. Mr. Fritz, will you read the consent items?
I will.
Thank you.
Committee recommendation 6.1, approve conditional use permit for Craig and Deborah Spees, Shannon Spees, Ingersoll, and Jeff Reig to allow dwelling on less than 40 acres in shoreland. 6.2, 6.3, and 6.4 have been removed for further discussion. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
6.5, approve application for club on sale retail liquor license. 6.6, approve LG 220 gambling application for exempt permit Friends of Ridgeway Fire Department. Change pages here. 6.7, approve LG 2020 or 220, sorry, gambling application for exempt permit Friends of County Climbers Snowmobile Club. 6.8, approve LG 220 gambling application for exempt permit Pickwick Mill Inc. 6.9, approve agreement with Houston County to provide temporary feedlot inspection services in 2021. 6.10, approve 2020 State of Minnesota Federal Boating Safety Supplemental Equipment Grant Agreement. And 6.11, confirm payment of disbursements. That concludes the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Meyer will second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Jacob, seconded by Commissioner Meyer to approve the consent agenda as read. Any further discussion? This one, let's do a roll call vote because it contains many items. So Commissioner Olson,
Olson, aye.
Commissioner Kavesi,
Kavesi votes aye.
Commissioner Meyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Jacob,
Jacob, aye.
and Commissioner Ward votes aye. So that's all carried. Thank you. Now to general business. Start off with the 6.4 was pulled for approval on an interim use permit for Elmer Yoder and Henry Yoder to allow a dog kennel facility. Commissioner Olson wanted a separate vote. Was there any discussion on that item?
I have no discussion, just I wanted a separate vote.
Okay, all right. So it would be in line to have a motion to approve.
I'll move to approve 6.4.
Commissioner Jacob moves to approve. I'll second Commissioner Ward. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor of approving the interim use permit, I will do a roll call. Commissioner Olson,
Olson, nay.
Commissioner Kavesi,
Kavesi, nay.
Commissioner Meyer,
Meyer, aye.
Commissioner Jacob,
Jacob, aye.
and Ward, aye. So it does carry 3-2. All right, thank you. Now 7.01, which is 6.3, the approved interim use permit for Dennis and Cindy Sue Glah to allow retail store. And Commissioner Meyer, with the discussion, you had some additional.
Yes.
Concerns?
So I think that I heard the, I believe Colin Anderson say that there was, part of this is going to be a retaining wall that's supposedly on his land and that he wasn't notified. So If he lives next door, I would assume that he would have been notified. I thought maybe staff, I wanted to give staff an opportunity to respond.
Morning.
I'm Ms. Megan Cabley. I'm a planner here in Winona.
Nice to meet you in person.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
I was a staff member that worked on this process, and I did double check the media notices that we sent out, and the neighbor notice, Mr. Collin was on that as well. I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
And could you tell me something about the accuracy of the retaining wall in his property?
That is accurate. When I did the site visit, we walked down the driveway, and Mr. Glaive mentioned that as a part of building a retaining wall for the proposed location of the cargo, that he just had planned on continuing it down. And then when I got back into the office, I realized it was on the neighbor's property and brought it up, and he said,
Excuse me, can you speak up, please?
sure, sure. Upon that site visit, I realized it was on the neighbor's property, and I brought it up to Mr. Glaive, and he had stated that that really didn't affect the idea of having a business. He wouldn't put the retaining wall up. He would just keep it right in that immediate area where he proposed the cargo container be, or simply bump out the cargo container and not need such a retaining wall. His property is quite sloped, which is why that retaining wall would be needed.
And I just want to confirm, I do attend the planning commission meetings, and I think everyone was on that night. So the structure, it's a pod or a container. It will never be operated any hours when the resident, Miss Glaive is there. I mean, she'll always be there when it's for hours of operation.
That's my understanding.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Any other questions? I think a bigger question is the future use of storage containers. It seems to be a booming industry. People are making offices, houses, recreational cabin, lake properties. I've seen some storage. I've seen some beautiful homes that were made out of multiple storage containers stacked on each other. So I think it's something that maybe we need to have a discussion of what we allow storage containers to be used for. So would a storage container still have the required setback? I mean, I'm surprised it would be so close to the property line. If you were going to build a structure, a pole shed or something, it has to be so many feet from the property line.
We would consider that as a structure. It's a temporary shed, the same that we would consider any shed that doesn't have a foundation. The setbacks would also apply.
Okay, so the setback then now from the property line is how many feet? 30
This
feet?
is 53 feet
It
on
is.
the current proposed location, but this property has a variance in place for the home, which is 38 feet. So it's well beyond where the home is at. So we consider that to be within the variance that was made, I believe, in 2007.
Closer to the road.
It's actually further from the road. The house is closer than the cargo container would be. So the house is 38 feet from the road, and the container is about 53 feet, kind of up closer
That's
to.
not the way I remember the site plan.
There's a bump out, maybe if that
On
helps.
the house? That
Yep,
one I
on the
didn't
house,
see.
yep.
Okay, that could be.
And this was something, these parcels were split
I
many
don't believe-
years
I
ago
don't
or
believe
not?
they were, I'm not aware of any split. They were,
Okay.
to me, they appear both to be lots that were
Okay.
created.
Okay, and I am, for the gentleman in the back, I'm familiar with that area. Yeah, it's a unique little road. Yeah, the whole Pickwick area is rather unique in how it all got laid out, and part of it's because of the stream and the lay of the hills and everything, how people decided to settle there, and how the properties got split around and stuff. But Pickwick, the road, Pickwick Mill Road, is it called? Loop. That's a township road,
It is.
right?
Yeah.
So they're in charge of maintaining and taking care of that. Okay, all right. Any other questions? Commissioner Olson or Commissioner Kvesi, any questions?
Not right now, thank you.
Okay, all right. So we have, do we have a motion?
I'll move approval of item 6.3.
Meyer will second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Jacob, seconded by Commissioner Meyer to approve the interim use permit. For the gentleman, the neighbor concerned, now, for clarity, an interim use permit, how often is that under review to see if they're meeting all the conditions? Because it is an interim and he does have some concerns. So what's the timeline for, or I hate to say it, is it all complaint driven inspections and things?
In this case, we are recommending the interim use permit be reviewed, expire after 10 years. And upon that time, they would need to reapply and go through the same process.
Okay. But if there is problems, we unfortunately work on a complaint driven basis
Yes.
for issues, if erosion or anything like that.
That is correct.
Okay, all right.
If they don't reapply, then the
It goes away.
container needs to be removed
That would be a part of the
in
plan.
10
Yep.
10 years. Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, so we have a motion to approve. We'll do a roll call. Commissioner Olson,
Olson, aye.
Commissioner Kavesi,
Kavesi, aye.
Commissioner Meyer,
Meyer votes aye.
Commissioner Jacob,
Jacob, aye.
and Ward votes aye. Approved. Thank you. 7.02 is the approval conditional use permit for Chelsea Low to allow commercial recreation campground. And Commissioner Jacob.
Yeah, I asked to pull that for a separate vote. For me, I can't, I don't really have any real issues with the application, but without the township approval, I can't support it. So I felt like the applicant should have probably worked through the township, got their concerns addressed, which she has not, and the township has reached out to me a couple of times on the issue. So for those, I feel like it's really kind of doesn't seem like a real big issue. She's with the division of Alba Township. Actually, the jurisdiction of the campground, half of it would be in Alba City and half in Alba Township. So she's going to get the 3 from Alba City regardless. She's going to get 3 from Winona County because our ordinance doesn't trigger until the 4th campsite. So she's going to get 6 of them either way, and she's asking for to have 8 walk-in campsites. So, I don't know, and if you look at this 10 years down the road and you look back, it probably wasn't a big issue. And I love to see Winona County be open for business, but for me, the emergency issues and the fact that she didn't get the township approval, I have to vote against it.
Okay, are there any other?
Madam Chair, just a
Commissioner
question.
Meyer.
And so this was kind of surprised to me, but then I did hear it that night. So what we're really saying is the 3 down below, they're already permitted. That's my understanding. She can have the 3 up above regardless of what we do today. So really this decision would be allowing for 5 additional campsites up above, right? Pretty much?
Yes.
Walk-in campsites.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions? I have one from staff, and I know we have legal representation here today?
Stephanie's on.
Oh, Stephanie's not.
There she is.
Okay. I find it odd. Condition number 2, I guess it's a condition. Number 2, the campers must be required to sign acknowledgements recognizing that access to the campsites by township and county emergency personnel is limited. And the acknowledgements must be retained by campsite owner, operator for the duration of the current camping season. We have some element of liability and risk in everything we do. And here we're kind of saying, we acknowledge that there's liability and risk, but we're making the camp owner have them sign these things. So we're saying, and I understand, and I'm a firm believer people should be responsible for themselves. But by even putting this in there, if somebody has a problem and they can't get emergency medical services, we're saying, hey, we told you, but I see it as an avenue to say, yeah, you told us, but that's part of your job to provide emergency medical services. And how would the city of and they're volunteers. The Elba, Plainview, I think is combined. Commissioner Jacob, is that correct?
I think this would fall under Altura, but yeah.
Okay, but it's a
They're
volunteer.
right on the border.
Yeah, it's a volunteer-driven organization, and to put those responders in a situation where they can't get to help somebody, when that's usually their passion, I just feel, I feel bad that we would put volunteer medical responders in a situation that, well, you might not be able to get there to help somebody that needs help. And by us putting this in here, just seems like we're opening up ourselves more. Because you go to a national park or a state park, I don't think you sign anything saying, well, you know, and they have a lot of walk-in primitive camping. So I was surprised to see that and hiking. I was very surprised to see that in our verbiage. And maybe Ms. Nuttall can address that.
I think the idea is to avoid actually the liability by acknowledging that we aren't able to provide services if they choose to go to that area. They're basically accepting the risk. I know there are areas where that's not an issue. You mentioned like national parks, things like that. There's an understanding there. And if I believe I was actually at one recently where it was posted that emergency services like that may be delayed. There may be issues in getting them there. It's essentially, you know, within Winona County, we have an obligation to provide medical services, to provide fire services, things like that. And if we can't, then I think it's at least fair to let people know that that won't happen. And I know that that was a significant concern of the township at the Planning Commission meeting where that came up about being able to get emergency personnel in there. And I think this would help alleviate some of those township concerns by having that acknowledgement that that may not be able to happen.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or concerns?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Kavesi.
thank you. Yeah, I attended the Planning Commission meeting also, and I appreciate that there was a serious discussion of this issue particularly. I drove out to see the site, and it is quite, it would be difficult to get up into where the primitive campsites are planned. So I'm in a dilemma because I would like to support primitive campsites for people who still want that kind of experience. I think that's valuable in the whole range of outdoor activities, and we're losing access to those sites, I think. But I realize, even from the Planning Commission, it was discussed that she can have the 3 cabins. They are approved by the city and they're on flat ground and have direct access from the road. And she would still be allowed 3 primitive campsites. And so we're only talking about 2 more primitive campsites that she would like to have.
Commissioner Kavesi, we've been acknowledged it's 5 additional sites.
Oh, okay, okay. I thought it was a total of 8. And so it's 8 up the hill.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you for that correction. Okay, yeah, that's the end of my remarks on this. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Commissioner Jacob, you represent that area and know the township. Do you think there's any way the township would be willing to try and resolve some of their concerns if we delayed approving this and asked the applicant to work with the township?
I guess I don't feel like that's a
Fair question.
fair question
Yeah.
to me. I can't speak for the township. I think they have, I believe they
tried.
have spent significant time on it.
Okay.
And
Well, if, I guess my question
we
may be
can
for
always
staff.
table something.
Yeah,
I
if
guess
we
that's our
deny it,
prerogative.
if it's denied, this is for staff then, if it's denied, when can they come back and reapply? With it maybe a slightly altered plan.
Could be a year, doesn't it?
Am I seeing a head nod at 1 year? Okay, all right. Okay,
Madam Chair?
Yes,
Yeah, so if we
Commissioner.
did delay, where are we standing with the 60-day?
oh, yes.
I feel a little bit more like we should just make a decision. The township has done their due diligence. They've made their recommendations to we'd kind of be putting pressure on them to go back and change their mind or reconsider. I think they've given us they've told us, they've reached out to me a couple times beyond their actual meeting where they discussed it.
Madam
All
Chair.
right. Yes,
It seemed
Commissioner
to
Meyer.
me that their comments were kind of the nature like, well, that road is too steep. There are going to be times of the year when we can't get up there. And I did go out and look at it, and yes, it's very steep. Right now it's dry, but I can imagine when it's muddy, and there have been issues with erosion right at that corner that have come in front of the road and bridge in the past. Is that not right?
When I first ran for office, one of the properties below showed me their garage, which had literally a foot of silted in material, and their bikes were up to the middle of the spokes and silt. They're like, we can't use our garage because of all this material coming off the hill. And there's I don't know that the applicant hasn't addressed erosion or I guess that would be, well, it's not in our jurisdiction. It's in Alba Town. That excavation is in Alba Township's or Alba City's jurisdiction. So it's a weird application with half of it being in our jurisdiction and half of it not.
And I know it was my opinion that culvert under the driveway there is not anywhere near big enough, but
Adequate
I am
sized.
not an engineer for sure.
All right, any other questions? All right, is there any motion to approve the conditional use permit to allow commercial recreation campground?
Also move.
Okay. We have a motion by Commissioner Olson to approve. Is there a second? Is there a second? Last time, is there a second to approve?
Meyer will second.
Okay, Meyer approves to second. All right, any further discussion?
Madam Chair.
Yes,
Yeah,
Commissioner
I
Meyer.
do have reservations. I visited the site. I also feel like, since it's not a question of, it's just a question of some additional campsites. I kind of felt like that was the clinching factor at the planning commission meeting. There's only so much that can be done. So, although I have reservations, I will vote to support it.
I would like to add, when I was younger, I camped in some pretty precarious places around Winona County. I've spent nights in caves. I think the part of the beauty of our county is that we do have a rugged places that we can camp and hike and enjoy. And I'm glad that people are willing to open up their land to allow people to do that. And I think that's part of the beauty of the area, and that we should support it.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Kavesi.
Yeah, I have reservations, but I also have fond memories of primitive camping in different areas. And we have the history of John Latch doing his version of primitive camping. So yeah, I think I can support it, but I do have reservations.
Okay, all right. Any other comments? I do have one. I've always been a advocate for township government, and I do need to support the township. They do have good issues with this. We are doing their zoning and planning for them, and we all received a letter and everything asking us some pretty serious questions. I'm an advocate, but for camping and primitive camping also. But unfortunately, I have some rugged land I can do, but that's my prerogative, and I unfortunately a lot of people don't. But we're not totally limiting her operation because they are allowed. And I would maybe with some future different planning for access or something, she could come back with an additional application and see how it goes with her startup operation. So I do need to support the township in denying this. So that's my reasoning there. All right, any other discussion? We'll do, we have a motion to approve. We'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Olson?
Olson, aye.
Commissioner Kavesi?
Kavesi votes aye.
Commissioner Meyer,
Meyer votes aye.
Commissioner Jacob,
Jacob, nay.
and Ward, nay. It does carry 3-2. Thank you. Good discussion. All right, 7.1, this discuss solar ordinance. We need to decide if we're going to invest any staff time or process to look at our current solar ordinance. It's the desires of the
I
board.
believe that
Yes.
Ms.
Commissioner
Qualley
Meyer.
would like to speak, so I would like to hear her.
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners, Madam Chair. We last revised the solar ordinance, and Commissioner Kavesi and Commissioner Olson, can you hear me all right? No?
You need to speak a little closer to the microphone, please. Thank you.
Okay, is this better?
Yes.
All right, great. I'll try not to make it buzz. The last revision to the solar ordinance was signed on January 2020, fairly recently. It's a fast-moving industry, so discussions with other counties, including some of the group that Commissioner Kavesi mentioned, have indicated that not so much the ordinance, but conditions imposed by county boards, planning commissions prior to the board's decisions have been morphing somewhat. So some of the issues include the amount of financial surety, which currently about 2 years ago, we changed it upwards to around 30,000 per project for 1 megawatt. And some other counties are closer to 50,000. If you look at the per pound rate for the recycling prices, say there was the need to decommission a 1 megawatt solar array that for some reason somebody walked away from and it remained unmanned for a year, in which case the CEP would be revoked and decommissioning would need to commence, might indicate that 55 to 60,000 is the correct number based on today's recycling rates, which could change if there's more operations. Right now, an operation in Onalaska can take the panels and they are sent to Ohio for tearing down of the heavy metals and the different components. There's also operations for intake in Lakeville and other locations as specified by the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. So other issues with other counties have included making sure that the banks that provide the financial surety are going to have branches in Minnesota. We have not previously required that. Some of this may or may not need to be codified because a dollar amount obviously changes over time and the zoning ordinances are very infrequently modified. So those are just a couple of things that we've seen. I will say that the department, with guidelines from the Planning Commission, as well as the county board and our own internal findings, have increased the inspections and stringency on screening and landscape plantings, as well as following the Board of Water and Soil Resource pollinator plantings to try to increase the vigor of those plantings with an eye toward reducing runoff, because some of the projects that are on steeper slopes have definitely had runoff. So those are a couple of the moving parts that we're experiencing, other than the thing that everybody's aware of, which is after the developers are done, somebody's taking care of them. We're trying to keep the names the same because we've been caught out more than one time in the Planning and Environmental Services Department where somebody calls up and we have no idea which project they're talking about. They have no idea what the original names were or even who the property owner is. So we're trying to tighten up internally sort of informal policies to make that more apparent. So those are a couple of the things that we've experienced. They may or may not relate to your discussion, commissioners, on this ordinance. I just wanted to have an opportunity to give you a little bit of input at the departmental level. Thank you.
Thank you. So direction, any direction we want to give planning department or planning commission? Commissioner Jacob.
Well, I might just have a question because I haven't been able to understand how this works. And I feel like it's been tried to explain to me multiple times. But when a bond, Planning Director Qualley, so when a bond is issued for protection that the money to decommission the project is not paid for up front, it's paid for over the course of the duration of the project. Is that right?
Commissioner Jacob and Madam Chair and Commissioners, there is more than one financial surety vehicle available to the developers. They can provide cash, which some counties have required, in which case it goes into an account and the county controls that account and then refunds it after satisfactory decommissioning. They can submit a letter of credit on a bank, which I referred to earlier. And then they can also do an annually renewable bond. So the bond is forfeit to the county if the decommissioning does not take place. Otherwise, at the end of the project, then they are released from having to renew the bond. So those are the three mechanisms. Right now, we're letting the developers choose.
So I don't know why, why I just don't understand it. But without the money being paid up front, any way you do it, where it's paid by bond or paid by any mechanism where they would somehow insure it or bond it over time, if they go bankrupt or sell, they're gonna protect themselves from having to pay that into the future. So once they dissolve or go bankrupt and sell it to somebody else, then no one's going to pay those fees to that bank, or why don't I understand how that protection continues to happen once that, and many of these have changed hands multiple times from company to company to company. So I just don't understand the protection and why once they file bankruptcy, they're just not free and clear, and who do we go after?
Commissioner Jacob and Madam Chair and Commissioners, so the legal aspects of the bond industry and what happens in the case of default is in the legal system. So I'm not going to be able to speak to that specifically. I will say that in terms of those changing hands and at least the bank aspect of things, with a letter of credit, when they've changed hands, we've received a notification from Bank One saying, please release us. And then we say, well, where's Bank Two? We now need to have your letter of credit on the next entity. And then we've erred on the side of being conservative and not releasing Bank One until we were very well assured that Bank Two was in play for the letter of credit. In terms of what happens if they all go belly up, that I would have to defer to legal. If it's cash though, if it's you know, obviously we haven't had that happen yet, and we haven't required it as a condition, but then the cash is controlled by us. And some counties have gone to all cash deposits too, I might add, or maybe I pointed that out earlier. Thank you.
Oh, Madam Chair?
Yes,
Yeah,
Commissioner Ryan.
so addressing, I think that'd be fine to explore how they work and to get the county protected by the best possible mechanism. I think that'd be a great thing. We don't need to open the ordinance to do that. Do I understand that right? That is part of the conditions, and we can, I mean, so I think that'd be a great thing to do. I would support trying to make that more secure for us.
Well, and so with that, this whole issue of who, to me, we got to quit messing around with the solar companies. We got to hold the land on. It's the land that we're talking about. This is what we control. We don't control what the panel does after it's up, but we control the land that it sits on. And so the bond, in my opinion, the bond should be with the landowner's name on it. And if they sell the land, then the new landowner, you know, has to. If I run a feedlot, it's on, you know, me as the landowner, not, you know, whoever I sell the animal to or anything. So, I mean, I guess we're messing around with these solar companies, as was said, you know, they've been sold multiple times.
Thank you.
They've been sold multiple times, and so then we don't know who's
I think he was just talking to me.
who we're dealing with, and I don't think that's fair to staff to chase the companies that, you know, we're spending a lot of time chasing the company to find out who it is. We just call the landowner and hold them accountable. Was somebody, Commissioner Kavesi, did you want to speak?
No, I'm fine. I'm listening.
Oh, okay. Was Commissioner Olson? I apologize. No, I don't see Commissioner Olson's smiling little face. I see the board.
No, I'm fine.
Okay, okay, all right. Yeah,
Oh, just one quick
Yes.
thing, not on the
Ms.
financial
Colley.
surety part of things, but in regard to landowners.
Yep.
So due to some kind of a perfect storm of too much rain, not enough cover on ground and so on, 3 years ago, there was an issue on a township road, lots of runoff and so on. So those kinds of things have tightened up over time, you know, as we're discovering with more of these, some of the issues that pop up. So recently, it became apparent that one of the landscaping plans was insufficient. It had blown down plant material. It had planted some plant material on the right of way, which we were alerted by highway. And so instead of trying to chase down who now owns one of these arrays that has already started operating, we did go straight to the landowner and have been working with them and then having them do the legwork, chasing down who's responsible now. And that took quite a bit of time on their behalf, but it
They're
does
making the
show
money.
your point, which is
Collecting the money.
it was a little bit labyrinthine, shall we say. So we have started to shift to that because obviously their name is on the CUP as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I just think they need to be held. Anybody else? Commissioner Olson? Yep.
So yeah, I got a question for Kay, and this would be, since Commissioner Ward brought it up. So what is our real fear with the solar industry? You know, I get that we have these bonds and other counties are doing it, but Commissioner Ward brought up a feedlot. So let's say I have a, you know, multi-thousand million gallon manure pit. What bond or surety if I'm the landowner, do I have in case that leaks and leaches into the groundwater or something? Are we holding the solar industry to a higher standard than we are to agriculture operations?
Thank you for your question, Commissioner Olson, and Board Chair Ward. So the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency in an egregious situation can certainly levy fines if it goes well beyond some kind of emergency situation. So there is some oversight there that doesn't seem to be quite as apparent with the solar industry. But I guess based on the Minnesota Association of Zoning Administrators, there have been discussions about this. This is where the financial surety, which devices different counties are using and which dollar amount, so that we are kind of in the middle with a $30,000 bond. And so it did not appear that we were an outlier as far as requiring some kind of method of financial surety, primarily for decommissioning. But we have no idea if decommissioning costs with additional facilities in the state of Minnesota, which is being actively worked on as part of 4 solutions with the MPCA right now, that they're going to release a paper on next year. If it will become cheaper because more are available and things don't have to be trucked to regional upper Midwestern like Ohio locations, or if, you know, the price of the components have more value in their recycling in the future, or if it will be the reverse. So not having a crystal ball, that's why I still work for a living. Thank you.
Any other questions? I got a couple points. I've read, you know, we all get all these articles, and I get a bunch of energy articles, and I've shared them with Ms. Qualley. One of them was, I think they had solar gardens, and they required ruminant animals to be housed along with the solar panels so that they ate they managed the grass and the weeds and everything. They raised goats or sheep underneath or in the same proximity, so that it was a natural, you know, lawnmower. The other one is where these solar panels come from. There was a article, and again, you know, you don't know what's real news and fake news, but many of these solar panels come from China, and many of these solar panels, by the article I read, are made in forced labor camps. And I don't know if at some point in time, the US government might restrict where these panels come from, but we're trying to be good neighbors. And if we're trying to do green solar renewable energies, but we're putting up panels that are produced by people in forced labor camps, I think that's a mixed signal that we don't want to do. But I don't know if we have any control over where these panels come from and where they're manufactured, but that is problematic. And then, we just debated CUPs, IUPs. I think, Ms. Cawley, have we been putting all the solar panels under CUPs? And to me, well, I'll let you answer that question first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So at this time, not based on the dollar amount of the investment, but we have been putting them under CUPs because we did not know a date or an event that would turn them or that would end them, because some of the panels could be reinvigorated by being updated individually and still continue on well past perhaps even a 30-year point. Technology may advance to the point where they just discontinue the panels, or they put new panels in and ask for another IUP, or ask for an extension if it were an IUP, if we switched it to an IUP. But because that date or event wasn't really apparent, the staff reports have been as a CUP. And so that's the reasoning. Now, some counties have said, well, the event would be, it's no longer in use, but if a CUP isn't used, for a period of time, I believe it's a year, then, it could be requested to be decommissioned anyway. So those two triggers for the IUP appeared to be absent, the way that we were looking at it and based on legal counsel's advice.
And see, in my opinion, it does have, we've put these bonds at 25 years or 30 years. So to me, it does, in my thinking, it does have an end, and it should be reviewed, because I look across the landscape, and one of the things that was renewable back in the day is windmills. And every farm used to have a windmill to pump the water. Well, a lot of farms, including mine, have the tower, but we don't have the windmill part. And that was basically the insurance industry didn't want those things up there that they might fall down and hurt somebody. So they probably 25 years ago, a lot of those, the spinning part of the windmill is gone, but you see a lot of empty towers standing there. So it's kind of, that's how I relate to it, is that maybe we should have had them take the whole thing down, not just the windmill. But anyway, that could be something that could be thought about maybe a little bit longer. And then we did talk earlier density. The ones in La Crescent area there, the car, that was a big concern of the neighbors, is that, they came in with one application, which most neighborhoods can, tolerate a little change. But then when they multiplied up to 3 now, it's a pretty massive, and it takes on a different look. It doesn't take on a residential look. It takes on an industrial, commercial operation look. And so I guess I would ask staff maybe to think about some type of density control per parcel or something. I don't know if that's advised or not. Commissioner Meyer.
Yeah, Ms. Qualley, I know that staff really did look into that. I don't think that anyone has quite yet figured out what a good density test. I think that's the problem. And maybe you could speak to that. I don't know, maybe things have changed in the last couple of years. I don't know.
It looks like Commissioner Jacob has something to add with that.
Yeah, with respect to density, and when you get the same company / landowner doing 1, 2, 3, I mean, was the intent that more landowners could have these opportunities? And by allowing, did we ever have a discussion about how many are we going to allow one person to do, and are we taking opportunities away from the general population as a whole because of these kind of building up in one area?
Ms. Qualley.
This is a wide-ranging discussion, so I'll try to stay on track with it. Another variable that relates to Commissioner Meyer's comments, if it's a commercial entity, so Is it me energy or my energy? I always get it wrong.
I think it's my.
My,
Okay.
my energy.
I don't think they'll be
50-50.
offended by whatever. you say.
50-50.
I'm a owner, so you can call it mine.
Okay, it's mine for Commissioner and Board. You know, they're putting up 5-megawatt solar facilities. We only have a couple of those. They look massive compared to a one, obviously, and have got to be situated just right, but I don't think they're putting up 1 megawatt. So then are we saying that those that are served by that would be unable to have any expansion? We were all interested to see that there was a third 1 megawatt in the same general area that we're not used to seeing a semi-industrial look. Some of the new plants going in, the zoning ordinance calls for a 4 to 6 foot balled and burlapped plant material, evergreens, maybe some mixed shrubs to connect the different types of evergreens. In some cases in the Car Solar, the property under discussion, they're putting up 6 to 11 foot evergreens in sort of a good faith effort, understanding that this created quite a bit more controversy perhaps than some. We don't have any idea what the future line capacity is from Excel, because without us making formal application like developers, we can't get the kind of information that would help to inform this discussion more appropriately, and I do apologize for that. But also, our understanding is if either funding is available or if capacity is needed, these systems will be upgraded, in which case existing capacity is sort of a moot point because they'll just increase the capacity. Whether a density overlay in certain areas of the county makes sense, that is a subject that we would be happy to see if any other density requirements or prohibitions exist with other counties, and do some back research if the county board would so desire.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Jacob.
Okay, so I don't know if we need a motion on any of that, or whether staff is just gonna, by consensus, look at those issues. The last piece that comes before the Planning Commission regularly is the erosion issues that it feels like as a farmer, many of these parcels that are going to go into solar panel areas, permanent vegetation could be established as a requirement prior to the project. But what we've seen is complete blade off grading of the topsoil, and I'm going to establish a pollinator friendly mixture of grasses, which is great, but they take a lot longer to establish than going in and drilling in alfalfa, or, I mean, a lot of these more conventional crops can protect the soil within months, and the pollinator things are great in the long run, but they take many years to establish. So, you know, I'm wondering about whether we should require that that's, you know, doesn't come out of row crop the year before, have no protection, and that some kind of vegetation be established prior to the project taking place. Because, I mean, we've seen some, if it were a farmer doing the same thing with his field, it would be frowned on.
Yes. Ms. Qualley, you have a thought there?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Jacob. So temporary cover is not precluded from this mix. Commissioner Jacob's absolutely correct. The permanent cover, the deeper rooted pollinators, as well as native grasses, do take time to grow. I've put them in the ground as a former landscape contractor and watched that 3-year time period, 4-year time period, and you know, for longer term establishment, which this is a longer term project. One of the problems with you know, pre-establishment is, well, not just the timetable, but also then we don't have the variety of pollinators that would pass the sort of the pollinator checklist, but also that the engineers who are producing the stormwater pollution prevention plans, which are an absolute requirement, that are inspected and reviewed by the department and by the SWCD, were not executed properly. So the core logs that should have been used instead was some wimpy silt fence on a big slope. So unfortunately, with the amount of staff that I have and our ability to get around quickly, you know, when something happens, after a big rain event, when they had inadequately executed their SWIP, if you will, because that's a lot of alphabet soup there, so I'll just call it a SWIP, meant that they had not done the right thing, and that then they received a letter and they had to fix it, and they had to grade off the township road and the neighbors and try to do some repair. But in fact, with erosion control blanket, with temporary seeding, with a combination of the various practices that are in the engineered SWIP, which the engineers have to sign off on, and they have to have a site manager managing it, we can hold them accountable for that. I think without the, as part of the ongoing learning experience that, you know, because they have an approved SWIP, are they going to execute it? That could be true for many other kinds of development, not to just pick on the solar industry. It may be something that in terms of getting the development certificate and things that we start to see that nailed down a little bit better, and staff is committed to doing that, just as we've committed to trying to improve the entire process. Thank you.
So just to clarify, this is something you're actually trying to do at this point, is to not give them a construction permit until they've got the SWIP filed.
Right.
Okay.
And they don't get a development certificate without it. And so,
Okay.
and in order to not have just our staff being punitive toward a project because they don't have the SWIP that we think they should have, we co-inspect the SWIP with the SWCD. In fact, I just received my recertification, so I'm on something like year 11 or 12 of being a SWIP designer myself. Now, I'm a generalist. I don't do SWIPs, engineers generally do, but it does mean that I'm qualified and certified with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency and the University of Minnesota to look at the things, and other department members. In fact, Ms. Cabley just passed hers. She said it was a terrible test. So they do, staff does have the ability to analyze what they're seeing while not being the engineers that produce them, but we can hold their feet to the fire.
Mr. Jacob.
So if staffing is part of the problem, that these require some intensive really oversight during and after. Something we've done out at Road and Bridge is if we need to hire an outside company that specializes in grade stabilization, or the SWCD, if that's part of the cost of doing business for the solar company, I mean, maybe we need to consider incorporating that into the CUP, because staff is limited, and I don't really expect it to fall on the taxpayer for us to hire more staff. There's got to be outside companies that specialize in what we need done that we could incorporate into requirements in that CUP.
Yes.
We have the internal ability to do it. It's a matter of right now, it's septic inspection season, and you know, a few other things that we try to delay or not delay anyone that's a company doing business for any reason. We try to keep things very much moving and with staff. So this is something that we can handle, but we need slightly better communication with the solar company saying, okay, today we're going to say that we've got all of our practices as approved in the SWIP installed, come and inspect, check. So that line of dialogue, I think in the past we were being a little bit more trusting that they were going to get it done right and that we would swing out at some point. So I think that may help some. And then if we find that that's not working, I think that's an excellent suggestion, and we would certainly avail ourselves of that and ask for that as a condition in the staff report. Thank you.
Well, to tie in with Commissioner Jacob, you know, maybe you as staff know how much time is being spent on a 1, megawatt. Maybe we need to adjust the fee. I mean, if you're spending a lot more time, we have a set fee for isn't every conditional use permit the same fee? Maybe we need a sliding scale or something.
Madam Chair, I think that you're very prescient in this, because right now I am working with staff. At our last staff meeting, we reviewed the fee schedule as we do every year. And one of the recommendations by zoning administrator Eric Johnson, and as part of the staff discussion in general, was a separate solar fee.
Yep.
For their project, because the amount of staff time is quite disproportionate for many of the issues that we've talked about here today. And also time with the SWCD is quite a bit more than normal too.
So again, I wouldn't be opposed to review. Commissioner Jacob.
And we can't just expect to go to SWCD just because they're another semi-internal Winona County government. If we need their services, we need to pay for those services.
Right.
And, you know, if they even have them available, and you mentioned you have the ability to do this internally, and it's just, I guess, the same at road and the highway department. They have the ability to do the shouldering, but we budget $250,000 a year to have independent contractors come in and do the same thing, because there's only so many hours for the staff we have, and it's the same with you. There's only so many hours, and if you need that support, you know, come to the board, and I would support whatever we need to do by way of hiring independent contractors or whatever kind of help we need.
Thank you, Commissioner Jacob. Toward your point exactly, and in conjunction with Commissioner Ward's point, some kind of distribution for the pollinator mix, seed mixes, because there's a lot of fine nuanced detail that I know all the varieties of the wildflowers, but the seeds per pound can be quite deceptive, and a mix that is not going to be long-term successful, that might have too much, say, annual black-eyed Susan in it, that's not a persistent plant in the landscape, that it has too high a percentage of seeds and things. The SWCD has specialized training for that kind of nuance, and a portion of that new fee per solar permit, I would also recommend be transferred to the SWCD for their services, because it's technical skills that need to be updated. So you guys are psychic. So thank you.
That's scary.
Okay. All right. I think we've probably given staff a good amount of ideas to explore. Is it just by consensus we want staff to continue to not necessarily rewrite the ordinance, but look at conditions and maybe modifying some things? Commissioner, pardon me?
That's fine with me.
Okay, Commissioner Olson, are you good with that?
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Kavesi? Are you good with the discussion we've had and the directions we've given staff to think about?
Yes,
Okay. and
Thank you.
Commissioner Getting nod head. Okay, all right. The sun is shining, which is a good thing. It is a beautiful sunshiny day. All right, thank you for that discussion. 7.2, discuss respectful workplace policy and behavioral ground rules.
Before you get into that, I just want to indicate that our county attorney had sent in correspondence, I believe, to the county board, if not, at least to myself, requesting that this item be deferred as she's on vacation and would like to be part of the discussion. It's up to you guys. But.
Okay, all right. I think we all got a memo.
Yeah.
Attorney Solomon's not available for the next, 2 meetings? So it would delay it until June, correct?
Yeah.
Commissioner Jacob.
Well, yeah, it was my request to have this on the agenda. And part of my frustrations really are kind of what I feel are the county attorney's involvement with the county board. And this has already been put off a few more weeks than what I thought it would have been, given when I asked to have it on the agenda. And to delay working on the issue another couple more weeks based with an issue that somewhat revolves around the county attorney interfering with our business, in my view, would be a little frustrating. I mean, we're letting her deny and delay this issue multiple more weeks than what it already has been. So, and I'm okay with having discussions without her.
Commissioner Olson?
He's just coughing.
Oh, your box lit up.
No, I have nothing to add.
Okay. All right. Well, it's unfortunate she's not here, but I've been along around so long that I remember the day when we didn't have a county attorney sitting at our county board meetings. And Attorney Sonneman is much more involved in our functions than some past county attorneys. Ms. Holte is on, and she's primarily in charge of this policy. So I guess we can go ahead and have some basic discussion. If we have any items we want Attorney Sonneman to address, they'll be.
I guess it could come, yeah, as long as we don't make any motions, it could come back when Attorney Sonneman is available, if she wants to have further discussions at that time, or?
Yeah.
Is that all okay?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you need, it's on the agenda, so you'd have to then, I suppose, continue it so that there'd be an opportunity. I mean, from a formal perspective, you have to do something based on our process that we have. But yeah, it could be done.
Okay. Yeah. All right, well.
Go ahead, Commissioner Jacob.
Sure, well, I did ask to have this on the agenda, and specifically after I received a letter of reprimand / violation of the county's respectful workplace policy. In my view, it seemed really largely, maybe it felt like an intimidation letter from the county attorney to really limit the input that my district and myself have at the county board level. So I feel like it's really infringing on our democratic process and how things are playing out in the county. A number of things that she brought forward in her letter was, quote, my abuse of power and authority, which I believe on page 111 of our packet is defined as violent behavior. And I just feel like this is way out of line. I haven't behaved violently. Inappropriate behavior for criticizing others and other county board members, inappropriate social media posts. I don't know who's going through my social media posts, but there's nothing on there and I haven't changed them. I have the right to free speech. Making destructive comments, badgering other commissioners, and reprimanding me multiple times for my position on the animal unit cap. I'm a political person. I've been elected to take political positions, and I feel bad if my political assertions offend other people, but I'm only responsible for what I say and do. I'm not responsible for the thin-skinned nature of other people who might not like my political positions. If they don't like it, and I'm gonna, I'll just be right up front, I believe that this request came from another board member. And I also have concerns about how this policy is working internally. There's definitely a difference between employees and elected officials. I've requested multiple times in writing to receive copies of exactly what I've said and done that generated the respectful workplace policy violation. The county attorney won't respond, personnel won't respond. I've got zero response. And if the public is going to elect me to represent them, and the county attorney is going to try to work with other county board members, I think, my opinion, to try to limit my ability to represent my district, the public has the right to know. So I think it's only fair that if I've said or done something, the public should know those word for word what it is that I've done and said that's in violation. On page 114 and 115 of our packet today, it says that it states that when a complaint is received, an investigation will be conducted and the results will be provided to the employee and the subject of the complaint. But that's not occurring. I haven't received anything on it. So, and then the other thing is that given our policy, commissioners are not to direct staff. The staff is supposed to work for the county board as a whole. So there's another place where employees are different than the elected body. It appears as though staff is carrying out directives from what I believe is one commissioner. And if the commissioner has a problem, it needs to come to this board. We'll discuss it collectively and we'll decide if we want to direct staff to do something about it. And I feel like that process is not happening. So that's again different from how things are handled with employees. But very frustrating, and this is whether it's an employee or an elected, if the person doesn't get to know what it is that they did or said, there's a problem with that policy. You don't just intimidate someone with the highest authority in the county attorney's office, try to limit their ability, in my case, to represent my district. And for me to contrast myself, there was some issues that took place in a court case. I want to distance myself from that. I don't want I don't want the community to think that I was part of the process that tainted. There's a lot of work done on the variance applications for the Daly's farm. And the judge threw all that work out based on a tainted process by 3 of the county commissioners colluding with LSP. And if I want to contrast myself from that and say that publicly, you know, normally the county board would act as a whole, and I would support that. But in this case, I'm not going to have the county attorney and other commissioners bully me into silence on that issue. So I have a lot of concerns with how this process is playing out, how it's really unfair for employees if they can't know what it is that they did or said, if I can't know what it is that I did or said. So I think there's a lot of issues here that that we need to figure out a solution for. And when it is that staff works for certain commissioners, and has anyone else filed a respectful workplace complaint?
Yes, I have. But I don't know if that, it went, to my knowledge, limited knowledge of what information was shared, it was not seen as appropriate, and nothing was done.
So, I mean, there's further concerns. The county attorney is working for some commissioners and denying other commissioners concerns with their violations. So, I mean, this is, as far as I'm concerned, it's maybe not illegal. I feel like a lot of it's unethical. And it would be completely inappropriate for me to have this happen to me and say nothing, because I'm just saying then that it's okay for this policy to be carried out as it is. And whether it's me sitting here or someone else, I think there's some issues with the way this process is working. So I think we need to discuss further. Well, you know, whether electeds are in the same boat as employees, whether they are employees, whether they're not employees. I believe that the constituency has the right to know exactly what it is that has been done and said by their elected officials that the county attorney wants to silence.
Anybody else have any comments? Any other comments? Okay, I do have a few. I find a lot of conflict in the policy between an employee and an elected. Now, as an employee, the policy just reeks that you're guilty. It doesn't seem to give, you know, and our premise in our country is you're innocent until proven guilty by the courts, by the law. And it's even reading multiple pages here, you know, it's designed as a set of standards, but it says in part of it, the results of the investigation shall be provided to the aggrieved employee, the subject of the complainant, his or her department head, and the county administrator. But then in another part, they're depending on statute saying under this provision, an employee to whom a complaint is made does not have access to data. And that's what I've been told. I did not have access to data that would identify the complainant or witness if responsible. So, I mean, right in our own verbiage, it is confusing. And they did put together a process. I think the process was new. And I have issues with number 4 in the process. It really goes into detail about electeds, but then in other parts of the verbiage and the memo that Attorney Sonneman provided us, quote, short of malfeasance in office or violation of open meeting laws, 3 or more intentional violations, only the voters can discipline a commissioner for bad behavior by not re-electing them. So with those statements made by county attorney and county staff, why did we get reprimanded? I mean, there seems to be a lot of double standards here within our own documents that are part of our package. And I'm not sure that I think there's employee to employee, and I think there's elected to electeds, and I think elected to electeds is different than, say, an elected to an employee. I think there definitely is a difference, and I think elected to electeds. So I'm not sure if this number 4, it sounds like it's elected to electeds, and I take issue with the process there, with the idea that only the elections can discipline us. And there's a lot of inconsistencies because, yes, I personally did file some following the suit that was pursued against myself personally, as was Commissioner Jacob. I filed some things and I was told that they didn't merit the policy, and it was done. No, to my knowledge, there was no investigation, no questioning of any other parties or anything. But we do have, as Commissioner Jacob pointed out, we have a court case that says, some people did some things that weren't, at minimum, unethical and not becoming of an elected representative of Winona County. So I guess I'm not happy with the policy the way it is. I think it's a guilty, and you're just guilty, and you have no recourse. Even an employee, again, if they're not sharing the information, like you got small children, you want to correct behavior. Well, you got to tell them what the behavior was so that they don't do it again. How do we assume that somebody, just because you get a letter of reprimand, you don't know what it was you did or who you offended? How do you expect that person to change their behavior? It's an unknown to me through this policy. And I think we're being hypocritical. In one place we say that they will be advised, and in another place saying, no, that's private data. And I understand private data, but again, why an individual of employment in Winona County can't see their own personnel file? It's their personnel file. I mean, it should be. Now, I agree the public shouldn't have access to it, but the employee should have access to their personnel file.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, we're not. Even as electeds, we're not allowed to see our personnel file. Any other comments?
Well,
Jacob.
In the county attorney's letter to me, she referenced that she's trying to really protect the taxpayer from potential liability, but it seems like in my view, her interference with the democratic process creates the exact liability that she's trying to protect the community from being responsible for paying for. I mean, we saw in the previous court case that emails were subpoenaed. People could certainly in the future be put under oath. Everything that's transpired, if there's any potential part of Attorney Sonneman working to silence myself in my district, I think that has high liability for the taxpayer. And I don't know why she should be involved in that at all. And why she's working on behalf of some commissioners and denying other commissioners the process when they request for a violation to be filed, and you were told that doesn't meet any of the criteria. There's a lot of question marks and all that. So I would propose that it comes back when Attorney Sonneman is available, and we've kind of brushed on some of our concerns here today, and then we can have an in-depth discussion on it when she comes back.
Is that a motion?
I'll make that a motion.
Okay, all right. I will second that. Any other discussion?
I believe I become the chair.
No,
No,
I can
just if you
second.
made the motion, or because you seconded.
Second it.
So is that yes or no?
I can still maintain the gavel.
Okay, go for
On a
it.
second. If I made the motion,
Awesome.
you're right. Okay, any other discussion?
Just a clarification.
Yes,
Isn't
Commissioner.
isn't this what Attorney Solomon wanted to come back when she's here?
Right, but she can't make motions.
Yeah, right. But okay,
Yeah.
so we're
Yes.
all right.
We're stalling, delaying until she's available. All right?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Meyer.
I don't know, what was in your letter of reprimand, because it's my understanding that that is non-public because it's a personnel issue. It sounds to me like you're both really upset about things that were said about you. And I'll just let you know that I have a lot of empathy for that, because I didn't appreciate it, because a bunch of things have been said about me recently, and some of them have been printed in the paper. So the best advice that I can give you, and it's the advice that I've been taking myself, it comes from my grandma Georgia. She lived with us. She raised me till I went to school. And she used to say to me, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me." And what I took that to mean is that my brothers and sisters could taunt me, and they could tease me, but that wasn't the same thing as a physical beating. And it was up to me to choose not to let those words define me, but to rise above them. And that's the best advice that I can give to you. And I really think that our time would be better spent for the taxpayers working on county business.
Any other discussion?
I believe the county attorney has the right to, she's been brought into this, she has the right to respond to the discussion today. So I'll leave my motion as is, and I think we should bring it back so she can, respond.
Right, and I don't disagree, Commissioner Meyer. I think this is distracting. I would like to see more clarity so that an employee to employee knows what would happen if they get caught up in this policy. And I think it's still a little unclear as to what they know, what's being said. So I think, I personally, I think electeds, we should put on our elected hats and not deal with these things personally. If we have issues with each other, we need to have that, worked out. But I have concerns from an employee to employee or elected to an employee, the clarity of what they know, how they're informed, and how we correct any behavior that needs to be corrected. So with that, so we have a motion, roll call to bring it back. Commissioner Olson,
Aye.
Commissioner Kavesi,
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer,
Meyer votes nay.
Commissioner Jacob,
Aye.
and Ward votes aye. So we'll put it on an agenda that is, I guess, when Attorney Sonneman is available. Mr. Fritz?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, that being the end of our business, we have an issue that has come forward. Mr. Fritz, the jail, the fake windows.
Yes, so it's not on your agenda, so what I'm asking here is to let me summarize what's going on, and then just a consensus on the action that I'd like to take. So we met with the City Board of Adjustment on the jail design. We were asking for 3 variances. One was for the height of the building, one was for the frontage of the building up toward the road, and one was for a reduction in the transparency standards, because windows in jails don't really mix. So on the height, they approved that, the variation height. They approved the setback of the building because of the sally port, which requires it to be close to the road to drive in, and then that sets the rest of the building back. So that was approved. But they did add a condition to the transparency requirement, and so instead of 60% transparency, which is really designed to create a storefront look on buildings in the community, as you might see at Bay State Milling, or you might see across the street at Fastenal, the newer buildings. They're brought up to the road. They have a storefront look to be consistent with historical buildings. They reduced it to 40% and then approved it. So I went back to the architects. We talked about, we didn't have a lot of time, so these are very raw numbers. But based on the square footage of the facade on the north side and the south side, which is where they asked us to implement that transparency number, the square footage based on the cost per square footage of doing that kind of design would end up in the $180,000 to $200,000 additional cost to the taxpayers that this facility is going to impact. So it also is very difficult because of the building itself to manage 40% transparency. So it's not just a cost issue. It's basically a practical issue. The architects indicated they can probably do somewhere between 15 and 20% transparency and still retain the integrity of the building and so forth. So what I'd like to do is go forward and appeal the Board of Adjustments decision to the City Council. We have to file a motion within 10 days and then bring in the architect and have them present something that might present that compromise of that 15 to 20% transparency. So basically adding some window features to the north and south side, but not near as much as what was required by the Board of Adjustment, and see if that would meet approval with City Council.
Right.
You
And
need a motion for that?
No, you can't. Well, first off, it's on the agenda, so you can't motion. I'm just letting you know my plan. If there's consensus, fine, and discussion, any feedback, any kind of thing else I need to consider, I'm take that information. But I think that's because of the short time frame, it's probably the prudent action. If some other compromise can be reached through the City Council discussion, certainly we try to do that.
well, I think, yeah, because the Department of Corrections controls how jails are basically built.
Yeah.
And they don't allow windows. I mean,
Yeah.
you couldn't have a functioning window
Right.
as we think windows. And so to put fake windows at a cost of $180,000 to $200,000, just, and it's not like we're a business where we can generate money it's just would be totally on the taxpayer.
Yeah, and this is an unusual building. It's not a retail building. It's not a commercial building. It is a jail.
Right.
And so it has they do appreciate that there are some unique circumstances. I think that also the way the storefront just wouldn't look right on most of the building, especially the backside. I think more windows or more FAW windows would be okay, but we need to come up with something that's going to work for that building. And I think our architects can do that, but it's not going to be the 40%. We can't meet that just on the design of the building. So we'll have to go with some kind of a plan. We do have a jail subcommittee meeting, or a committee meeting, I think this week, and we'll probably talk about it a little bit more, but we'll want to get that application into the City Council.
My question, I don't know if it'd be for legal or whether you can answer it. There already is a jail there.
Yeah.
And this is an expansion of an existing function. So, I'm wondering whether existing non-conforming, if there's any regulations there that would allow us to expand this facility without meeting those requirements. My goal certainly would be to be a good neighbor to the city and make it fit what they want, but the service needs to be provided to the community, and there's already a jail there. It's going to continue to be a jail there. It's a jail. I mean, to try to fool the citizenry that it's not a jail seems a little disingenuous too.
I agree with that.
I want them to know
Yeah.
it's real.
Yeah.
I would just offer if there's any assistance that I, as a commissioner,
Yeah.
a personal note, I mean, I'm happy to do that.
And we
Call
can-
my,
Well, I think you,
my
yeah.
council person, I'll call her.
Yeah, exactly. And the various avenues they have available to you, including attending the meeting, would be helpful. I'm sure it's a Zoom meeting as well right now. So, or probably both, I'm not sure. But yeah, I mean, that from what I've talked to Carlos over the planning over at the city, we're subject to their zoning requirements. So, and if their zoning requirements say we have to, I can't answer this question specifically. I can ask Carlos, but we wouldn't have been going for that variance had the city thought that we had some other option. So we were forced to go for the variance because of their zoning laws, and they did change them recently, last couple of years. So they have
Yeah, it's new.
what you see around town is not what's being built now. And so there's a lot more requirements for this kind of look and feel than there was in the past.
And in my nature, I'm always looking for bargaining chips. So
Yeah.
I did have a quick conversation with a city council person, and then and on advice called Carlos to learn. I didn't realize it was this quick of a process, timeline. But I did, in addition to that, I asked him, is there a restriction on the amount of barbed wire we could put up? Because, you know, when you go to prisons or anything across the state, you see barbed wire.
Yeah.
And my friend Nancy in Washington, D.C. saw fit to put barbed wire up around my national Capitol buildings. And he, I caught him off guard. He kind of looked and he says, I don't think we addressed that. So as a bargaining chip, if they won't let us do something, we can say we're going to put barbed wire. The pretty curly, barbed wire around.
Razor wire.
I've always said you got to have fun at this job too.
All right, so that's all I have on that.
Yes, so you'll let us know when that meeting.
It should be,
in
if
10
it
days.
should be June 7th.
Okay.
That's at least what Carlos said, if we get our application in. He sent me the form. I have not seen it yet. I have to fill it out.
Okay, June 7th. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Updates. Commissioner Kavesi, you had an update.
Yeah, I had an update from the Winlak Policy Committee meeting yesterday. We reviewed the agency letters that we've received, and they addressed their priorities for the project. And we had a presentation from the Minnesota Department of Agriculture regarding their priorities, and their letter is in process, so we should receive it soon. We continued working on the advisory committee and on the public outreach options, and we updated the status of the requests for qualifications. We have 4 applications. The policy committee is participating in the interviews, and we will approve and select an option at the June 12th meeting. So that's what I have on the Winlak.
Okay. All right.
And that informal update will be posted also.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Commissioner Meyer, you had an announcement and a board action.
Yeah, the announcement first is simply that I am so grateful to emergency management and our health services, the city's fire department. I'm so happy to have had my vaccine and actually be able to get out and start doing things just like being here in person. And so I want to thank all the staff at the county and the city who have made this possible. I do have a request for a board action. You probably, well, if you read the paper, you've seen that there was a resolution that was passed by the Human Rights Commission. And I understand that this is not just a city commission, that it is also a county commission. I have several members of the board who are constituents of mine, and I spoke to at least one of them over the weekend. They went to the city because they were told by staff that they did not have in their charter the ability to come to us. So I would like the county board to explore the content of the resolution that was recently passed by that board. And the goal would be to ask them if they can work with us to modify the language so that it is something that the county board could actually agree to and take action on. Now, I guess the thing is that I would want to make really clear, and this is what I told the person that I talked to on the commission, that the county doesn't have the authority over the sheriff or the courts or the prosecutors or the Department of Corrections, right? So most of us have already said that we're not planning to build a juvenile detention facility. And that is in this resolution. But the resolution also asked the board and several other county authorities to enact a zero youth incarceration policy. And so I applaud them, for their passion and for their energy and their information about how racism is a part of juvenile incarceration. But they have been a lot less diligent about their research related to how state and local governments grant and are granted authority. So as a county commissioner, I and this board as a whole, we lack the authority to enact a zero youth incarceration policy. And if you think about that, if a young person is accused of and then is convicted of a crime, we do not have the power to control what the courts are doing and what the Department of Corrections are doing. So we can't keep them from being incarcerated. Once that happens, once they become arrested or convicted, then there's nothing I can do about it. Now, to say that I cannot implement a zero youth incarceration policy does not mean that I support incarceration. I would prefer to help kids and not punish them. So the current language of this resolution is far too absolute for us to, I mean, we do not have the authority to do this. So we do administer Health and Human Services, and we do that on behalf of the state of Minnesota. And we have some influence over the programs that are implemented for youth. I know that there has already been the start of a mapping process to identify gaps in youth services. I also know that some conversations between our staff and staff over in Olmsted County have started, and that is to get some of the ideas because they recently were able to close their detention facility. So what I would like to explore is what programming we currently have. Can it be made better? What are the gaps? And then I would be interested in working on a resolution that says we will work towards reducing youth incarceration, probably as well as out-of-home placements in the areas that the county actually has agency. So that's the action that I would like to take. I guess I'm looking for a second.
This is Commissioner Kavesi.
Yes.
I would second this mostly because it addresses the issues that have been in the public attention about zero juvenile incarceration. We do not necessarily have control over that, but at the same time, working towards prevention, diversion, all of those options are the better way to go. So I'm supporting this to be on the future agenda.
Okay, all right, so we have support. Well, and so we'll, yes, we just move it forward to another item. Yeah, lots of work's being done, and how do we condense it? All right, so that would be on a future agenda.
Thanks.
All right, anything else?
Nope.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh,
I would suggest that we wait until Attorney Sonneman is back.
and, well,
Well,
of course,
we need to decide whether it's gonna go further. We need a third.
Yeah,
Right,
we
that's
need
the
to
next
back,
one,
yeah.
yeah.
right,
Okay, yeah,
we're ahead of ourselves.
that's true. Yes.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Jacob, you had an
Yeah,
announcement?
everything's been addressed. I don't need anything.
Oh, okay, all right. Just, I came up with one thing, Commissioner Myers, that we're getting somewhat back to normal. Yes, this is a good thing. So I think we all got the notice June 7th. We're actually going to have an AMC, Association of Minnesota Counties District meeting, and there is going to be a live possibility. And, you know, I've missed seeing other commissioners from other counties. We have a bunch of new commissioners from those counties, and I have no idea who they are. So there will be June 7th. I think that's in Waynesboro. So we can put that on our calendars. And then there will be a virtual option, I think, later in June also. So on our calendar. All right. Anything else to come before the Winona County Board at this time?
Move to adjourn?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Jacob, seconded by Commissioner Meyer to adjourn. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We are adjourned. Go enjoy this beautiful day.